When Terrence Howard sat down for that now infamous podcast interview, no one expected him to go there, but he did, and what he said instantly lit the internet on fire. Out of nowhere, he claimed that Diddy didn't just invite him over for business. According to Terrence, it started off as Diddy asking for acting lessons, but things took a strange turn real quick. Terrence said Diddy would sit and just stare at him. No script, no work, just vibes. Then came the invites to hang out, again and again. That's when Terrence's assistant dropped a bomb. "I think he's trying to fee you." Terrence didn't hesitate. He cut off all communication immediately. But that wasn't even the worst part. Terrence claimed he wasn't the only one. He said Diddy had a disturbing pattern of targeting black men at his infamous freak-off parties, massive, secretive events where the goal wasn't just fun, it was domination. According to Terrence, these weren't parties at all, they were setups. He said Diddy would lure men in, break them down, and rob them of their manhood. And he made it very clear. Once that line is crossed, there's no coming back. He didn't name names, but he made sure we knew this went deeper than just a creepy invite. This was about power, control, and humiliation. And Terrence wanted everyone to understand. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, a very dark one. But the real shock? This wasn't even the secret Terrence was afraid to tell. Just when it seemed like Terrence Howard had dropped all the tea he had on Diddy, he did something that made people realize he was just getting started. He posted a video to Twitter. Nothing flashy, no background music, no dramatic lighting. Just him, speaking directly into the camera. And the way he spoke? Calm, controlled. But every word felt heavy, like it carried the weight of secrets he hadn't even begun to share. He said that if anyone wanted to challenge the truth he told, they needed to come to him like a man, eye to eye, face to face, integrity for integrity. Then he said something that made everyone stop and rewind. "Otherwise, we'll end in a duel. A real-life duel, where only one person walks away." That wasn't just shade. That was a warning, a threat, and people were stunned. But it was the hashtag he used at the end of the video that truly sent the internet into a frenzy. #mancard. Now, if you saw his podcast, that term might sound familiar. Terrence used it when describing what he claimed Diddy did to black men at his so-called freak-off gatherings. He said once a man gives up his manhood, once it's taken from him, there's no getting it back. According to Terrence, that's what Diddy allegedly wanted, to strip men down, humiliate them, and leave them broken. So when he brought that term back in his Twitter video, it wasn't random, it was calculated, a signal. That hashtag was a message, and fans caught it fast. People immediately started connecting dots, realizing Terrence wasn't done talking. In fact, it seemed like he was building up to something worse. Something he hadn't said on the podcast, maybe something he couldn't say without putting himself in danger. The video had all the signs of someone who was being watched, but still refusing to stay silent. Then, whispers started flying across social media. Comments, DMs, anonymous posts. Some folks claimed to know what Terrence was hinting at. Others were just speculating. But one name kept popping up in the chaos. A name that had all but disappeared from public memory. Ava Barron. And suddenly, that random adoption Diddy announced during the pandemic didn't feel so random anymore. In 2020, while the world was locked down and glued to their phones, Diddy went live on Instagram and dropped something completely unexpected. No warning, no build-up, just breaking news. I adopted a white child. Her name? Ava Barron. The moment was strange, even by Diddy's standards. In the video, a young white girl stands awkwardly next to him as he introduces her to the world. He says she's now part of the Combs family. Ava stumbles over her words, shyly saying her name, Ava Barron Combs, as if she wasn't entirely sure what was going on. Diddy jokes, laughs, and plays it off like it's a feel-good, spontaneous moment. He even compares himself to Madonna, referencing her controversial international adoptions like it's some celebrity rite of passage. And that should have been a massive red flag, because even back then, people had serious questions about how legit this adoption actually was. There were no legal documents, no clear explanation of her background. Diddy claimed he got permission from her mom, but that's not how adoption works. And the way he described it, saying he woke her up off the streets and brought her in, felt more like a savior fantasy than a real act of guardianship. But here's what's even more disturbing. After that live stream, Ava practically vanished. No follow-up interviews, no birthday shout-outs, no family holiday pics. Just a couple of quick cameos and videos with Diddy's twin daughters, and then silence. Fans didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was camera shy. Maybe it was a temporary guardianship. Maybe it wasn't that deep. But now, in light of everything Terrence Howard and Diddy's ex-bodyguard have said, people are re-watching that video with very different eyes. Ava's body language was tense. Her face looked confused, uncomfortable even. And people are starting to wonder, was that awkwardness just nerves? Or was it fear? Because here's the thing. If Ava was just there to be part of the family, why did Diddy center her interaction around his sons, not his daughters? Why did she disappear so quickly after being introduced? Why was this child brought into Diddy's inner circle, seemingly overnight, and then completely removed from public view? Something about it just doesn't add up. And now that federal indictments are coming down and new allegations are surfacing, people are starting to ask the one question that could change everything. What really happened to Ava Barron? If Diddy's live stream introducing Ava Barron wasn't already strange enough, there was one moment that left everyone completely baffled. He compared himself to Madonna. He literally said, "I adopted like Madonna adopted kids." And at the time, people kind of brushed it off. But if you know the history behind Madonna's adoptions, that wasn't just a weird flex. It was a massive red flag. Madonna's adoptions, especially from African countries, have been under fire for years. Reports claimed she bypassed proper legal procedures. Organizations like the Ethiopian World Federation even accused her of exploiting vulnerable children, saying she misled families into handing over their kids under the promise of opportunity, only to adopt them outright. That's not exactly the comparison you want when you're adopting a child, especially during a pandemic. But Diddy didn't stop there. He went on to say that Ava was on the streets, and that he just decided to take her in, like she was some stray he happened to rescue. No paperwork, no context, just vibes. Now here's where things get even more uncomfortable. Why were Diddy's sons front and center in that video? Ava said she wanted to play with his kids, but instead of hanging out with his twin daughters, who were closer to her age, it was the boys she was placed around. And the way Diddy framed it all, it felt forced, like he wanted the world to see something, or believe something. People are now rewatching the footage and pointing out things they missed the first time. Ava's voice shaking, her awkward glances, the way she shifted in place while Diddy talked over her, the way she smiled like she had to, not because she wanted to. Some say it was just an awkward moment caught on camera, but others, they're not so sure. And when you add that to the fact that Ava basically disappeared after this, no public updates, no school announcements, no birthday posts, it starts to feel less like a feel-good adoption story, and more like the start of something darker. Because if this was really about giving Ava a better life, why hasn't she been seen living it? What was really going on in that house? And more importantly, why does it feel like Diddy was trying to control the narrative from day one? While people were still debating whether Ava Barron's adoption was real or staged, Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, came out swinging. And what he said took this story from suspicious to straight up disturbing. Gene had been quiet for years. He saw everything from the sidelines, working in Diddy's inner circle, watching how the man moved behind closed doors. But recently, he decided to break his silence, and when he spoke, he didn't hold back. According to Gene, Ava's adoption wasn't about kindness. It wasn't about saving a child in need. It was strategy. He said Diddy was under pressure. His image had taken hits, rumors were swirling, and public trust was shaky. So what did he do? He pivoted. He found a way to get people back on his side, to make headlines for all the right reasons instead of the wrong ones. And that's where Ava came in. Gene claimed that Diddy found a little homeless girl and brought her into his world not out of compassion, but out of pure optics. The goal? Make himself look like the good guy, the family man, the celebrity with a heart. And for a moment, it worked. People bought it. Social media lit up with praise. Diddy adopted a white child? Wow, he's really doing something different. But behind the scenes, Gene said it was all a carefully staged performance. Once the news cycle moved on, so did Diddy. He didn't raise her. He didn't integrate her into the family. He didn't check on her. According to Gene, he dropped her, like she never mattered in the first place. And here's where it gets even darker. Gene didn't outright accuse Diddy of abusing Ava, but he didn't exactly protect him either. He said, "The industry knows the truth," and left it at that. But the way he said it, the tone, the pauses, the weight behind his words, it left a chill in the air. He wasn't talking like a man spreading gossip. He was talking like someone who'd seen too much and stayed silent for too long. He implied there were things the public wasn't supposed to see, that Diddy operated in ways that never made it to the blogs, and that Ava may have gotten caught in the middle of something she never understood, something she couldn't get out of once the cameras turned off. Gene even suggested that Ava was never meant to stick around, that once her face served its purpose, Diddy pushed her out of the picture. There was no birthday celebration, no family bonding, no future plans, just a live stream, and then crickets. What started as a feel-good story was now starting to look like something much worse, a manipulation. A child possibly exploited for clout. And worst of all, no one knew where she went after. Fans began asking hard questions. Where's Ava now? Why hasn't she been seen? Was this just a publicity stunt gone wrong, or was it something more sinister? Gene didn't give all the answers, but he gave us just enough to start connecting the dots. And once you hear what federal investigators are allegedly looking for, it might make those dots even harder to ignore. By the time Gene Deal hinted that something darker was going on behind the scenes, it was already clear this wasn't just another celebrity scandal. The rumors had taken a sharp turn, from shady party stories to something that sounded dangerously close to a full-blown federal takedown. And then came the whispers that changed everything. Federal investigators weren't just after financial records or witness statements. They were looking for footage, real, recorded evidence. According to sources close to the case, what the authorities wanted was deeply disturbing. Private videos allegedly taken during Diddy's infamous freakoff parties, some of which might involve underage individuals or people who were being coerced without their knowledge. Let that sink in. This wasn't just about lewd behavior. It wasn't just about wild parties. The feds were allegedly looking for content that, if it exists, could be criminal. And the second that word got out, the internet exploded with theories. Because there's one thing people know about Diddy. He's always been a showman. From the club to the camera, he's obsessed with image. And according to multiple insiders, he didn't just host these parties, he directed them. Every detail, every setup, every angle. Some even claim he had the parties filmed like full-on productions, with lighting, rooms staged for performances, and guests who didn't always realize they were being watched. And then came the allegations that some of those guests may not have been adults. That's when the rumors started to get real dark. Gene Deal implied that these weren't just speculative fears. He said the feds had a specific reason for raiding Diddy's properties. They were acting on information, a tip, a pattern, something that pointed to actual videos being stored on his devices, videos involving girls who looked younger than they should have. He didn't mention Ava by name, but he didn't have to, because fans already remembered the live stream, the way Ava looked, the way she spoke, the way her eyes kept darting off camera, how she seemed unsure of her own last name. Ava Barron. Combs? Like she wasn't even certain what role she was supposed to be playing. And then, just like that, she vanished. No school enrollment, no social media presence, not even so much as a tagged family vacation photo. It's like she was introduced for a scene, then cut from the story. And then, the federal indictment was updated. That update is what made the speculation explode. According to court documents, 2 new anonymous victims were added to the case, women who were allegedly trafficked, filmed, and manipulated into acts they didn't fully consent to. And while the names were kept private, the timing of the additions and the language used in the documents had people asking, could Ava be one of them? The feds said the victims were transported across state lines, offered career opportunities, or manipulated with promises of money and housing. They also said these individuals were coerced using fear, emotional manipulation, or outright threats. One line in the document sent chills down readers' spines. These orchestrated events were produced and directed by Combs and often recorded. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces started looking way too connected. The video, the live stream, the disappearance, Gene's warnings, Terrence's hashtag, the feds' updated charges. and the fact that nobody's seen or heard a single confirmed update on Ava Barron since 2020. Some people online believe Diddy kept her around just long enough to capture something he thought he could control, and when things started heating up legally, he distanced himself to avoid suspicion. Others think she may have been silenced in a more direct way, either hidden or pressured into staying quiet. And then there are those who fear the worst. Because if the feds are really looking for these kinds of tapes, and if what Gene hinted at is true, then there may be footage involving Ava that Diddy never wanted anyone to see. Footage that, if recovered, could blow this case wide open. And that would make Ava not just a forgotten child in Diddy's story, but potentially the key to bringing it all crashing down. For months, the rumors kept building. Whispers of secret tapes, hidden victims, and disturbing patterns. But it all came to a head when the federal government officially updated their indictment against Sean Diddy Combs. And suddenly, the speculation around Ava Barron didn't feel like just a theory. It started sounding like a real possibility. According to newly unsealed documents, the indictment added 2 anonymous victims, referred to only by pseudonyms, to the list of people allegedly exploited by Diddy between 2009 and 2024. But it wasn't just the addition of names that had people talking. It was the language used to describe what happened. The documents stated that Diddy engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse. Not just one-time incidents, but a systemic operation of control. The abuse, according to prosecutors, wasn't limited to women. It involved other individuals, which instantly widened the scope of possible victims. The details were chilling. The feds accused Diddy of using his power and influence to lure people, mostly women, into his orbit under false pretenses. Promises of career help, financial support, safety. But once inside, these individuals were allegedly subjected to psychological manipulation, coercion, and in some cases, threats. And that wasn't even the worst part. The documents went on to describe freakoffs, the same term Terrence Howard and others had used. These weren't casual parties. They were described as produced performances, where individuals were coerced into performing explicit acts, often while being recorded. The feds claimed these performances were directed by Diddy and sometimes involved other male participants brought in as part of the setup. And the way these victims were allegedly controlled, it wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional. And that would make Ava not just a forgotten child in Diddy's story, but potentially the key to bringing it all crashing down. For months, the rumors kept building. Whispers of secret tapes, hidden victims, and disturbing patterns. But it all came to a head when the federal government officially updated their indictment against Sean Diddy Combs. And suddenly, the speculation around Ava Barron didn't feel like just a theory. It started sounding like a real possibility. According to newly unsealed documents, the indictment added 2 anonymous victims, referred to only by pseudonyms, to the list of people allegedly exploited by Diddy between 2009 and 2024. But it wasn't just the addition of names that had people talking. It was the language used to describe what happened. The documents stated that Diddy engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse. Not just one-time incidents, but a systemic operation of control. The abuse, according to prosecutors, wasn't limited to women. It involved other individuals, which instantly widened the scope of possible victims. The details were chilling. The feds accused Diddy of using his power and influence to lure people, mostly women, into his orbit under false pretenses. Promises of career help, financial support, safety. But once inside, these individuals were allegedly subjected to psychological manipulation, coercion, and in some cases, threats. And that wasn't even the worst part. The documents went on to describe freakoffs, the same term Terrence Howard and others had used. These weren't casual parties. They were described as produced performances, where individuals were coerced into performing explicit acts, often while being recorded. The feds claimed these performances were directed by Diddy and sometimes involved other male participants brought in as part of the setup. And the way these victims were allegedly controlled, it wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional. That person? 50 Cent. Say what you want about him, petty, relentless, savage. But one thing's for sure, 50 Cent doesn't just throw shots for no reason. And when it comes to Diddy, he's been on a mission, Long before the lawsuits, before the raids, before Terrence Howard spoke out, 50 was dropping hints that something dark was happening behind the scenes. At first, most people thought it was just industry beef. 50 had long accused Diddy of being shady, manipulative, and hiding secrets. But people chalked it up to jealousy or pettiness. They thought 50 was just trolling, doing what he always does. But now, his warnings are starting to look like receipts. Last year, 50 Cent announced he was working on a documentary titled, "Did He Do It?" At the time, it sounded like a joke, a play on words, but he wasn't joking. He said it loud and clear. "I'm the best producer for the job. Here come the receipts." And that's when things got interesting. Sources close to 50 claim that he's been gathering real evidence, footage, testimonies, messages for years. Allegedly, he's spoken to people who were inside those freak-off parties, people who saw what really went down, people who were silenced or scared into hiding. And guess what? According to an insider, Ava Baron is going to be a major focus in the documentary. We don't know if 50 has video. We don't know what he's seen. But he posted one tweet that sent shivers through the internet. "They can't charge him for what we saw, but we can't unsee it." Let that sink in. He's implying that something was recorded, something horrifying. And even if the courts can't prosecute Diddy for it, the public, us, won't be able to ignore it once it comes out. And here's the most explosive part. There are whispers that 50 Cent has already handed over some of his findings to federal investigators. If that's true, and if Ava is part of what he's uncovered, then that documentary isn't just content, it's evidence. With Diddy's trial approaching and the feds closing in, it's only a matter of time before everything comes spilling out. And when it does, Ava Baron may not be the forgotten girl in Diddy's story. She might be the one who brings it all crashing down. So let's put the pieces together. Terrence Howard spoke out about Diddy's disturbing behavior and hinted there was more he couldn't say out loud. He used the hashtag #ManCard and warned that powerful people were trying to silence him. Then came Diddy's forgotten livestream, where he introduced Ava Baron as his adopted daughter, only for her to vanish without a trace. Diddy's ex-bodyguard, Gene Deal, called the whole adoption a publicity stunt. He claimed Ava was used for optics, then discarded like she was never part of the family. And then came the federal raids, the updated indictment, the allegations of freak-off parties, hidden cameras, underage victims, and performances that were orchestrated, recorded, and exploited. And through it all, Ava's name keeps popping back up. She was the quiet piece of this puzzle, until now. Because suddenly, the same girl who disappeared might be one of the unnamed victims at the center of a federal investigation. And if the rumors are true, if 50 Cent really has footage, if the feds find what they're looking for, Ava Baron might be the one who exposes everything. This is no longer just about Diddy's fall from grace. It's about how deep this goes, who knew what, and who was sacrificed along the way. But what do you think? Was Ava just a publicity pawn in a chaotic celebrity story? Or is she the silent key to a scandal that's way darker than any of us imagined? Drop your thoughts in the comments and check out this next video, because the deeper we dig, the messier it gets.